Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I start the video by thanking all of you for following and continuing to follow the channel, for trusting me, and for achieving such an important result. This is intended to be a video that is for the three main, so to speak, categories I cover: a bit of retro computing, a bit of programming, and a bit of Linux, combining the useful with the enjoyable. And why not consider it a special for 500 subscribers? As you can see, we are on the page of a Linux distribution based on Debian. And for this reason, we will talk about Linux, but we will also talk about the Commodore 64. As you can see here, a beautiful opening screen of the Commodore 64 as a retro computer is being activated. But we will also talk about programming, especially regarding the installed languages, and this new feature, which is the Commodore OS BASIC has reached version 1, to which we will return with separate videos, where practically the BASIC of the Commodore 64, the CBM BASIC, has been reinvented, so to speak, for our times, in 2025. We also add a touch of IDE magic. Of course, we translate the entire page with our fantastic artificial intelligence, which we have also covered in several videos. It is a pleasure to finally release Commodore OS Vision, which is a fan-made Linux distribution, of course, free, based on Debian, thus on the latest version of Debian, and it revives the Commodore brand. Commodore OS, as the title here suggests, is a futuristic retro version of what Commodore could have been in this alternative timeline. Who knows? If Commodore were still around, we might have this Commodore OS. Great presentation. I really wanted to mention it to you. Of course, we will install it with VirtualBox to see the various features. Commodore OS now even has its own BASIC. It is a modern implementation of BASIC with 3D graphics, full sprite integration, tile map, 2D and 3D physics, and more. Truly brought up to what it is today. As we will see, the look is based on CompEase, which is present in all Linux distributions. Moreover, it has been modified in some parts regarding the terminal, but the features do not end with what I have mentioned, because it also includes a whole series of emulator features and more to truly revive the experience of the 80s with our beloved computers today. Commodore OS 2.0 was released in 2023, and on April 22nd, 2025, we released Commodore 3.0. Attention, because while version 2.0 was approximately 3.5 gigabytes, I have already downloaded it, and this is a zipped file. Anyway, we have a zipped version of 36 gigabytes, and it is not a part of on a VirtualBox, so a prepackaged disk. It is actually an ISO image, as is, in which the operating system will be installed, and we will immediately see it from installation to configuration and everything I have briefly brought to you in these few minutes. Well, I have configured the virtual machine in which I have Commodore OS 3.0. Let's take a look at how the machine is set up in the settings. Well, it refers to a Debian 12, as I told you, bidirectional points. As for the system, we have the native order. I left the PR2 chipset, although it would be better to use the CH9 here because it is more modern. For the processor of both, I enabled PAE, and the enablement is identified with 3D acceleration. And so in the video card, the video memory should be set to 128 VGA. The storage is an 80 gigabyte disk, which is more than sufficient. Obviously, the network and shared folders where they put the shares and so on. Note that if I show you here for a moment regarding the system and storage in Commodore OS, it's 35.25 GB, and this is an installation CD, because inside there are numerous features. Obviously, I started the machine. As you can see, there's an initial troubleshooting regarding VirtualBox can't enable AMD Waystation. I did a quick fix as I removed the AMD KVM from the kernel, and then I'll look into it in more detail. In this case, well, yeah, the installation starts, and obviously I won't be here to install it all. I mean, to show you, unless there are particular issues, and then I'll get to the end, or where I'll directly present the system to you. But as you can see here, the part has already started without any particular problems. Well, while I complete it, icons, I have set it to scaled mode name. I'll let it finish, and then we'll start the actual installation. The desktop appears like this with Compiz, which I had already shown you, and we'll look at some of its features. Presentation slides by Leo, Nigmet, the warmest, and most heartfelt thanks. Of course, visit the site, and we are ready to start with Commodore OS Vision. There are still. Welcome to OSRE Vision to continue use Vision. You agree with the following terms, which we will obviously accept unconditionally and continue our experience. Checking installation. Please, media. Attention, look, beautiful. Yes, a mistake was made. Drag and drop operation of the guest failed. Well, we still have a start regarding the installation. Here I had already mentioned this part earlier. You can find all the various tools in the previous video that I had left for you. Oh, it's checking the installation ISO, which I remind you is over 36 gigabytes. And then, well, we'll go ahead and install it directly. Here, as you can see, it's in Mac OS style. So classic Commodore 64 browser, application menu. We have Firefox, LibreOffice, one command line interface, which is really, really nice. The music player, Synaptic Manager, because it's Debian, will show the desktop, exit. I would like to show you this. While it does its thing, it's truly spectacular because this desktop terminal is exactly and reminds us of what our Commodore 64 is, and thus these various retro computers. Obviously, this is the terminal, of course. Perfect. Look, it's spectacular. And while it's installing in the various windows, which, by the way, previously also gave me an error, there's the whole part where it, so to speak, shows us this beautiful Tron-style desktop. It's nice. The drag and drop option is as nice as it quickly becomes tiresome. I tell you this with a heavy heart. Let's see a bit. Spectacular. I'll leave you for a moment with these screens while it finishes the various installations. It's really, really very, very beautiful. By the way, this is also a 4K screen, and so yes, you can see a little bit. Oh, I think this is also due to the acceleration or something else. By the way, while we are installing, there will also be a part still regarding the site where it practically provides us with all the installation instructions: VSGA graphics controller, 3D acceleration capability. Clearly, in my case, a VirtualBox error occurred, so I temporarily removed this module from the kernel. It is possible to do this on Rufus. In the first video, I encountered some problems because there was an online upgrade to do, and the first image needed to be fixed. But I had left it directly in the first video I made. And then, well, it gives us further information, but we continue with our installation. We choose the keyboard, and then we find ourselves directly in the operating system if there are no particular things to show you. Well, what can I say? The first one went much more smoothly, and I preferred it. Anyway, well, nothing special here. I chose the router station 4, the swap, and then you're basically sure. Moreover, there was also everything that told me I could do the non-manual installation, but in fact it didn't work. Well, location, create a swap file, and anyway, I let it go as is, just as it is. Nothing special here either. I chose the locale, the language, a few other steps, nothing special. Getting help, basic information about Commodore OS Vision. We've already seen Commodore S, and from here, we just have to practically install and let the installation program run to have everything necessary and guaranteed fun. Commodore OS Vision. Well, as you can see, I had to split the video into several parts. Now I'm restarting the installation of Ginta Commodore OS in VirtualBox. As you can see here, so it starts up and then, as usual, we will end the video practically when the product is finished. Well, Commodore OS Vision is starting up now, and then we will be ready for the installation on the virtual support. All right, now as usual, let's go ahead. And to continue using the Commodore OS Vision, you agree to the following terms. As you can see, to accept and to hear the music anyway, and very wave problems are from the mated wallpaper. Nice, we will go ahead and install it anyway. You see, there's that. So we won't do the risk check. We'll listen to the music a little at the start. It's taking the size. Now I have turned down the music a little bit, I remember, but then I'll put it back because it was a mistake I made, reading that it requires a hard disk size greater than 85 gigabytes. Here we can say Commodore, for example, 64, .com World Group, Commodore, OS, Perfect, and everything else. It requires. So we let it run until it's practically finished. We have now reached 97%, so the actual installation of the virtual machine should be closing. I don't know if I'll install it on physical support anyway. I prefer to keep my 2.0. Maybe I'll highlight some features that I see here and will see when I start the machine. And then I'll obviously evaluate whether to put it on hardware. 97%, we are almost finished, and then we will do an overview of the Commodore OS 3.0 product, where we have seen a part on Linux, a part of the installation. We will see some requirements on retro computer parts, and then in the third part, nothing less than with BASIC 1.0, which I mentioned to you. This is how the desktop looks. I still need to install the guest editions that are present here. It's very nice regarding, as I was telling you, the Mac OS style desktop with the configured Firefox browser that we can see here. I had already shown you the terminal, and since it is a Debian based system, we have the package manager, of course. Well, sounds, colors, and so on. We have in the applications a wide range of applications that are already present and installed. Not for nothing, the ISO is, let's say, about 36 GB, and we have an installation of over 85 GB. Here we can see from the typical accessories that we can use, like the call live interface that we used, some text, managers. Let's say a part is already installed regarding PDFs, the new Emacs. In short, we lack nothing. Also, the education section with TuxMac and TuxPaint can be useful, especially for the intended target. As for design, we have FreeCAD. I'm not sure if Blender is present, but we can install it. Moreover, the games section is really very extensive because we have a whole series of games regarding action, old adventures. Additionally, Skooma is installed, and there is a wide range of emulators already pre-installed, which we will look at later. Some games regarding desktop chess, platforms that couldn't be missing, and many of those typical 80s games, or even those installed recently. Pulse, RAM, shoot 'em up, or construction, simulation, sport strategy. We still have this part where it is quite complete, where the entire wine section is installed directly. In particular, we find wine tricks and play on Linux, which allow us to play games directly executable for the Windows system. Then we also have a whole section that is convenient for the Steam game service. Of course, Proton and this Play on Linux cannot be missing, as they are all applications that allow us to easily insert our Linux Windows games onto the Linux counterpart.
Regarding graphics, nothing less than Blender, which is clearly placed here instead of Design where it is perfect. Amiga Deluxe Paint Clone, image manipulation with GIMP. So these are, so to speak, normal applications present in every Linux distribution. As a web browser, we have both Firefox and Chromium, as you can see here, and BitTorrent and FileZilla for FTP are also installed, as well as Discord. So in reality, there is already a whole suite of pre-installed programs, but this distribution is really designed to revive our old Commodore as it should have been in our days. From the Office suite, we obviously lack nothing, and the new features that we can then go and see, and we will perhaps see in the third part, is this Commodore OS BASIC, which has reached version 3. And what is it? It is practically a reinvention of what our Commodore BASIC 64 is in a strictly modern key, where it takes up the concept of sprite, sound, music, and so on. Among other things, Gambas is also present, which now has a complete development. SDL Basic, Roberto Viola, the creator, Computer PV, and it is an excellent tool for the construction of BASIC. Of course, Visual Studio Code could not be missing. And also in Visual Studio Code, we have the inclusion of add-ons regarding the Commodore 64, the CBM Program Studio, and many other units, of course, regarding sound, Amiga Player Sound, but then you can see Winamp, ALSA Mixer, and so on. Now, I haven't checked. Probably this is still Zorg. I don't know if I'm missing this data to confirm whether this version is practically Wayland and Pipewire, but nothing transcendental because it should work as is. Winamp Atari 2600 Music Tractor. For videos, obviously, OBS Studio is installed, the VLC media player, clearly the webcam capture part, and then we have numerous system tools like the file manager Rufus, which is for creating ISOs to be able to install it. We also have a whole section regarding the installation of NVIDIA drivers. So it's based on Debian, but has a counterpart based on the MX tools of the AMX distribution, which really facilitate the use of Debian. Universal access, not. Basically, you can see how it's made and the strong point is that we have the entire series of emulators for the Commodore 64 BD20, the Amiga. And I had also seen some videos on Eros, and even, believe it or not, the emulator for the Commodore 65 as it was supposed to be, which we might also take a look at. Obviously, this enormous distribution cannot end. This way, because we have distributions like the Commander X16, various PlayStations, regarding Sony, and we also have everything concerning the emulation of the Commodore from Sega, the ZX Spectrum, Nintendo, Sega Master System, and so on. Moreover, I had seen in a video on the internet that there is also the entire operating system, AROS, DOS emulator. Gosh, really, nothing is missing. What can we say here? Command line interface equal terminal. Nice music, of course. Here, there should be NeoFetch, even if it has been deprecated. I leave it as it is for now. Anyway, the desktop is Maze. Then we have Compi, which I already mentioned, 16 megabytes. But as I told you, the resolution is 1280 by 800. Well, that's what I did on VirtualBox. Let's see. The kernel is 6.12. The distribution I installed on Kubuntu is a 6.14. So actually, let's say it's one of the more modern kernels. Moreover, here, I saw that it was recompiled specifically to adapt because they are AM64 CPUs. Probably some modifications were made. As for the CPU, there's a pass-through. It's an AMD Ryzen 7000 4800 with Radeon graphics. And while here it uses graphic acceleration, but nothing special really. So always reading the instructions. And here I'll enlarge it for you. The default system password is capital C equals, which basically takes from the Commodore 64 in the sense of the Commodore. and from here you can install, well, anything, obviously. You go and look for it. You need to, in all Linux distributions. Carefully read thousands and thousands of pages of README, Kixt. Well, now that we are authenticated, let's install the VirtualBox guest editions, as you mentioned. So we have our machine running at 100%. Then maybe we'll set it to 1920 by 1080. And then when we're done, we'll come back here with a bit more speed. Of course, in this part, I will cut out the entire video installation process and so on to provide you with a more complete and accessible product according to YouTube's timing, as I always tell you. The installation is complete. VirtualBox guest editions, close the windows. That's it. We have nothing else to do. Now let's rearrange everything. Well, here too, we have installed the guest editions. Now, as far as the entire graphical interface is concerned, it has significantly improved. Obviously, it doesn't recognize the monitor, but this is essentially a virtual machine running on VirtualBox. I need to better configure what is on my Kubuntu because the kernel loads KVM by default, which conflicts with VirtualBox. Despite having disabled the mobile loading, there were some issues here. Everything went smoothly, but there I didn't understand why the whole system froze halfway through the installation. I'll make some more attempts. Anyway, it's very nice. I can't say anything else. Well, now let's move on to the applications, the emulators. Attention here, a novelty, because here we have the Commodore 64 and we launched the Commodore 64 through our Vice. But be careful. It's not the usual screen we are normally faced with. It's a particular preloaded ROM called OpenROMs. And if I'm not mistaken, I've already put the link to OpenROM source replacements. I need to verify, but most likely they will be found in this project, or the various OpenROMs. Exactly, as I was telling you here, particularly about the Mega 65. Well, nothing special. You just need to complete what is the original ROM of the Commodore 64, and it will practically return to our view, to our usual Commodore. Moreover, even here, as I'm seeing, 532 should technically work correctly. We need to take a moment to see, because instead of the usual 38.911, we have almost 20K additional, but here R3, I clearly need to understand how they implemented everything. Maybe we'll do it in a separate video. So out of curiosity, I'm going to launch the VIC-20 as well. Obviously, there's always the little tune that it plays, but at the moment, it hasn't launched. Let's see, let's try again, unless this is present. Okay, let's try to exit. Application Commodore Emulator, Commodore VIC-20. No, it can't launch. So there's definitely something to fix or adjust. Obviously in the emulators, well, here there are some emulators, but here is the whole section of emulators on the Commodore. We also have what is the Commodore 65, which technically should be an evolution of the Commodore. But here it can't launch it. Right now I can't see. Cannot open file requested, be system ROM, no such file or directory. So here, I don't want to say for sure, but it most likely requires a ROM. I don't know if it's paid or if it's available, but it's not launched for this reason. So I'll show you what works a queue and what doesn't, and what you can do immediately. Well, now regarding the ROMs, I wanted to point out something. For example, we launch what is the Commodore Amiga, but it doesn't work, not because there's a problem in itself, but because I remind you that the ROMs can be purchased from Cloanto, and it is clearly indicating that the actual ROM needs to be purchased. So the solution, you can purchase them from the Cloanto website, which we will now go and take a look at. In fact, here you can see the configuration of Huawei, and in Amiga Forever, it is available Well, here it shows us for Windows, but then they are easily extractable because they are all in a folder and can be purchased from here, ranging from $19.95 for a digital edition to an edition with CDs and a little manual and so on. And let's say it's not that it doesn't work. Sorry, it's not that it doesn't work, but clearly you need the original ROMs. Please, let's not go back to what was the piracy of the 1980s, which essentially ruined, especially in industrial piracy, the video game industry, particularly in Italy. Okay, purchase them. Then under the emulator section, there is truly an incredible series of other emulators like the Commander X16. We have DOSBox already installed to load our DOS games, Mamie Arcade, Emulator. There are really so many. And you can see that it has directly thrown us into full screen on practically a series of consoles and images that are already present. Obviously, then here we will return to the Commodore OS mode. Of course, I've only looked at a few more. The Sinclair emulator, the Mega 65, the Atari emulator. In short, there are really many already installed and configured clearly. For some, you need to add the ROMs. This is just a small overview. We also have the Nintendo, the NES, the MX emulator, the MAME arcade, some we've already seen, the Commodore emulator, and so on. Incredible, truly a suite that takes us back to the glory of the 80s. In modernity, of course, from 2025,